now, seeing that investment and that shift from the company may open up a lot of great internal promotion opportunities for your staff.
Do we really have a talent shortage? I think it's kind of maybe how we're looking at it.
I talk to a lot of manufacturers who have smaller brands and they are fighting for talent.
We used to require degrees for that. And now we've had conversations around, what are those other experiences?
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Talent Talk. I'm your host, Becca O'Toole. I am excited to bring the conversation with an old friend of mine, Molly Clancy, from my talent acquisition days back at Wayfair, to the conversation. Molly, I'm so happy to have you joining me. Thank you so much.
Excited to be here, Becca. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
So Molly lends a ton of experience in manufacturing, in a lot of other verticals as well, but has a depth of experience as it relates to talent acquisition and strategy as organizations are thinking about their workforce. And so, Molly, I was really excited when you agreed to be a part of this podcast with us and to share some of those insights and learnings from your career with us. And I know manufacturing is kind of like a newer section for you. And you've been consulting in that space. You've been doing some work with some very large names and very big brands there. And so I'm excited to hear about those experiences. And we'll kind of tee it up. A lot of our conversation will be around candidates, right? What does the candidate population look like? What are some of the challenges manufacturers are facing today with workforce and really diving in there? So first question I have for you. I'd love to hear from your perspective. What are the biggest challenges organizations face today when trying to attract new talent in this kind of tight labor market?
Yeah. So what I've seen, in my experience across all industries, not just manufacturing, but, I've got some supply chain experience and more corporate functions as well. But across all industries it is a tight labor market. So it's a fight for the right talent. And it's been an evolution over the years kind of on, the employer market versus the candidate market. And I feel like we're in more of a candidate market right now where, there are a plethora of candidates out there. We really have a talent shortage? I think it's kind of maybe how we're looking at it of, let's be a little bit more creative in how we're finding those candidates and how we're treating those candidates in the process. So I think especially in the manufacturing space, where you've got so much, people interaction, it's really about how you're treating the candidates and, that candidate experience that really sets the employers apart in this really tough labor market.
Yeah, I mean, candidate experience is huge. I am really curious. We talk to manufacturers all day, every day, and a lot of them believe or feel that there is not enough talent available. What would you say to them? How would you kind of counterpoint that?
Yeah, so I think it's how we're looking at talent and how we're evaluating talent, right? So, looking at things like, are we requiring a degree? If we're requiring a degree, are we looking at specific behaviors or skill sets? Is it for something more specialized? Or are we looking for certain behaviors that, folks can get in other avenues, whether that's, non-traditional education, or different types of career paths. So I think it's really nailing down what are those basic components of the job that we're looking for. So one of the things that we recently did was we looked at the, job descriptions of some of our most common leadership roles, production supervisors, and those types of positions within the plants. We used to require degrees for that. And now we've had conversations around what are those other experiences that we can pull from that are getting those same behaviors or qualifications that a degree could give you. It took a bit to get our hiring managers and everybody on board. It's a little bit of a shift in how we're thinking about things, but we've been really successful in opening up our candidate pool and getting just really great talent that might have kind of that non-traditional background. So I think it's, a big piece about just thinking differently and how we're framing things too.
I think that's got to be great for your existing workforce, right? That incumbent workforce that may have not had a traditional, GED or college degree. Now, seeing that investment and that shift from the company may open up a lot of great internal promotion opportunities for your staff, which
Yeah.
is great. Like it feels like the right thing to do, doesn't it?
Yep, and that's the thing that we've seen is that people are getting more excited. They can see themselves really building a career here. And then I think another important piece of that is, what are we doing to develop our people while they're here and what are we providing? So that just opens up the opportunities for them. So yeah, it's always nice when you can, promote and grow your internal people, but then also bring other external really great people on board too.
100%. Speaking of the candidate experience, I know this is something that we talked a ton about in our Wayfair days, right?
Oh,
How do we make sure we're kind of bringing that employer value proposition into the candidate experience? And I think today's candidates, their expectations have changed of what companies should offer, what the interview process should look like. All of these things, the landscape has definitely shifted in the past, I would say even 3 to 5 years. And so I'm curious, how do organizations like Purdue Farms shift to meet that need or that adaptation?
yeah. So I think, one of the biggest components of that is communication. So candidates really just want to know what is the process and where do I stand? And so that simple communication, it's, having a structured interview process. It's having, recruiters that are, able to be communicative with the candidates and helping them to understand, we have a 3-step process for this role or this process is a 2-step process and here's what's next. So really being able to articulate what they can expect, a timeline around that, and then following through. I think that's, we hear about ghosting all the time, right? Candidates ghosting employers and employers ghosting candidates. And so, really putting a focus on that follow through, making sure we're closing the loop with every candidate, whether we're moving forward with them or not. And then being transparent in our process as well. So, we've got some different things, on our career page that, are candidate facing, maybe not necessarily here at Purdue, but in some previous companies and roles that I've worked at, our career page, will kind of help candidates to understand what to expect in the process, what kind of questions we ask, just so that, we can really bring that transparency and kind of just eliminate that barrier to entry for candidates.
It's so important, I think, and a lot of organizations, I think, are starting to come online to this concept. But, let's say you hire 1 out of 20 candidates, right? Those 19, you want them walking away from that experience thinking, that was the coolest organization. I loved those people. That was such a great experience. Maybe it didn't work out today, but I'm going to try again. Or I'm going to, tell a couple people about, how wonderful Purdue is, right? And I think that comes from those simple touches, communication, clear expectations, right? Just what we would want out of any kind of interaction with a company, right? We want to know what we're getting and we want to know where we're at in the process. So it's not just limbo all the time.
Yep, exactly. I think one of the most like fun stories I have around that is I stay in touch with candidates on, LinkedIn and things like that. A candidate, this was actually back in Wayfair days, but a candidate that we didn't move forward with, I stayed connected with. They ended up referring somebody to me for another position that I was in past Wayfair and we ended up hiring them. And that was their experience just from having that open communication, maintaining that relationship. So I think that was just a, fun little example of that.
That's so fun. And that's very your style, right? Just like be a good human, treat everyone dignity and respect. And I think those things that cultivates your network, right? That you never know. You never know when, you can help someone out or someone can be helpful for you. And I think just being a good human in that way, obviously paid good dividends. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
very cool. So I am curious, just since you have a lot of experience in manufacturing, but also outside in other industries in the TA space, what innovative approaches have you implemented or have you seen implemented to stand out as an employer of choice?
Good question. I think that's kind of the $1 million question right now, right? Is like what are employers doing to stand out? And to especially in this tight labor market. So I think a few of the things that I've seen be successful kind of across industries are things. So first of all, learning what's important to the candidates, especially within manufacturing. entry level positions, even leadership positions within manufacturing. A lot of times it does come down to the money. So doing things like offering hiring bonuses or transition bonuses, or even things like retention bonuses for your current people. In addition to that, really understanding what's important to the candidate and trying to have efforts behind that. I think the other piece of that is just overall employer branding and how the company is presenting themselves to their candidate population. Purdue actually recently went through a whole rebranding. With their employer brand, they've got a brand new career page, some really great insights into the company and different roles within the company. But I think that's another piece that separates, a really good employer from maybe a good employer is, putting that effort into meeting the candidates where they're at, what is in it for the candidate, and really taking that candidate centered approach. I think, in the short term, maybe a little bit burdensome on the bottom line, but in the long run, with, the reputation that, you're building as the strong employer brand, it just helps attract more talent. So
Yeah. I talk to a lot of manufacturers who have smaller brands and they are fighting with the Purdue's for talent. And I think it is a different kind of challenge that you guys are facing when your employer brand is so well known from the product standpoint.
right.
But not everyone connects that with what is that like to work at Purdue Farms. Do you, from your seat, have you experienced any challenges with that where there is kind of a perceived notion of what it is like to be part of the Purdue family versus, actually going through the experience, interviewing and coming on board?
Yeah. So I think, I've got experience with this too when I was at my time with Wegmans, supporting manufacturing hiring there as well. They also had a big employer brand and employer name, and, different sets of challenges with that is, sometimes folks look at the company and they don't think, oh, I can take my background from X and translate it here. It's not always immediately evident, how that experience will be transferable. Wegmans being a grocery store, for example, but we hired, engineers, and we hired production associates from all different backgrounds. So, it's not just, oh, if I work for this company, this is the job. It's really, being able to speak to all the areas, the functions of the business, roles and how they relate, and, showing people that, hey, if your background in X, Y, and Z could be a great fit for here. And here's why.
I love that. Yeah, I think that is funny, right? You're a grocery store chain. That's how I know I love Wegmans. They don't have it out here in Colorado where
Yeah.
I'm at, which I'm, devastated by. But I would never as an engineer think Wegmans, right? And so that is a good way to think about it. So knowing that you are hiring for really diverse types of talent, and all sorts of types of roles. I mean, as it relates to production, workforce, blue collar workforce, things like that. What strategies have you found most effective in your go to market strategy as a recruiter or kind of to source new talent profiles?
Yeah, one of the things that, I've seen consistently work across the board are things like job fairs and hiring events, and utilizing different technology to like help elevate that. So using things like Indeed hiring events, which, kind of sounds like a basic concept. But I think there's, something to getting people in person, especially for those in-person roles in the manufacturing world. You're not working from home, you're in the plant, you're doing the job. So, we've seen those be really successful. You're building that relationship with candidates right off the bat. And then just being creative about where we're finding talent. One of the places I worked, we ended up going to a mountain bike race to promote our brand because we wanted to hire tree climbers. So we were looking for people that enjoyed the outdoors and, wanted to take their love for the outdoors to a career that, made a difference. So we ended up going to different events to, find where would these people hang out. And we ended up making some hires based on that. So,
Wow, that is creative. I love that.
yes, going to these like niche events or asking your people, where do y'all hang out in the world and how can we meet you where you're at? And showcase our brand. So those are some of the things that we've done.
And who doesn't love to hear that, right? Like, you're so great at your role. We'd love to hire 10 of you, right? Where can we find you? Help us, you know, get invested in this process.
Yes. And that definitely goes a long way too. Using your people. We always say, I feel like in recruiting, we always say good people know good people. So, referrals, but also rewarding your employees for that. So doing things like, referral incentives, and different things like that, I think goes a long way too.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's more fun to work with people you like, right? And so be a
Exactly.
part of that and getting them involved and truly then it's a reflection on the organization, right? If people are recruiting at all levels for their peers, for different levels in the organization, that is going to just lift energy and spirits and productivity tenfold. I can't underscore that enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Molly, thank you so very much for sharing some of your candidate and TA insights with us today. I know your advice and your consulting services are very valuable for a lot of organizations. And I have definitely been the beneficiary of some great advice from you. So, if people want to get in touch with you or stay connected or just be a part of your network, how can they best reach you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. So I'm linkedin.com/in/, Molly Clancy one.
Oh,
So
girl, I feel like you've said that a time or two, maybe.
I haven't, but it rolls off the tongue easily.
I love that. Well, Molly Clancy, you certainly are an individual. And so I'm sure people will be able to find you on LinkedIn. And again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and a little bit of your time with us today on this episode of Talent Talk.
Well, great to be here and great to catch up with you, Becca.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.